Good morning. We're here again with Pat McGuigan. Thanks for joining us.
Sure.
Now, despite the uncertainty of the national economy, it seems that Governor Fallin is optimistic about Oklahoma's economy in the future. Why is that?
Well, several factors. The unemployment rate is, I think, roughly 4% lower than the national level. The surging government revenues are a direct result of strength in the private sector, which of course is what provides most of the resources for government. And then finally, it's the overall picture for the state. We're better positioned than most of the other states to endure even turmoil.
Do you have any insight into new industries or new companies that the governor or the state is trying to attract?
Yeah, a group of reporters, we met with the governor early this week, and she's real upbeat after returning from a trip to Chicago in particular. She is putting a lot of emphasis on the potential for research on and then manufacturing of unmanned aerial vehicles. You're starting to hear the term UAV a lot about these ways of doing all kinds of practical jobs that are now done by human beings. And that's one she points to in particular. While she was in Chicago, she met with Blue Cross Blue Shield officials. She met with the home offices, if you will, of a lot of businesses that are developing an increasing presence in Oklahoma. She went out to the West Coast several weeks ago to participate in a wind power conference. All of these, she thinks, are things that are going to have a long-term benefit for the Oklahoma economy.
Well, what concerns her most when she looks at the national economy?
Boy, that's a great question. I actually outlined about 10 things in terms of her concerns. Very quickly, the continued turmoil surrounding this entire debate about the default and the debt crisis concerns her greatly, in part because there's been no timely signal to the markets. That's why you began to see on Wednesday of this past week, you began to see the markets react negatively to the possibility of things really spinning down. Additional things, $24 billion in federal money. That's what goes through the Oklahoma economy in all facets in the course of any given year. That's a lot of money, and she's worried that that's not going to be coming into the state or that pieces of it will slip away. A good practical example that's already happened is what's happened at the FAA, where at least temporarily 133 people have been put on furloughs because the FAA reauthorization didn't get done in time several days ago.
Now, another topic that you've been following for a long time, education. There's some rumblings going on between the largest teachers union and some school districts. What's the issue there? Yeah,
there's not a particular battle that's joined yet, but Richard Wilkinson, who's the attorney for the OEA in the most recent OEA, Oklahoma Education Association publication, is kind of rattling the cage and rattling the saber, I guess, a little bit. Talking about, he's asserting that the 14th Amendment basically requires the prior status quo in Oklahoma in terms of the rights of teachers to appeal dismissals, what was called trial de novo. But trial de novo is not universal. And trial de novo, which was an automatic trigger to litigation in the case of the dismissal of a teacher, was taken away by the legislature. The legislature can regulate a right, and what the 14th Amendment requires is that a person have the right to access the courts, not a guaranteed trigger from one form to another. At least that's my interpretation. So when we interviewed for CapitolBeatOK, a representative of the School Board Association, there was this long pause when we described what we had read in Wilkinson's article, and it was sort of one of those oh my goodness, OMG moments. And so I don't know where this goes ultimately, but he's definitely sending out a signal that, hey, you know, we may just litigate you to the dickens out of you.
Well, do you expect competing legislation between the two sides?
That's very hard to say. I'm not sure it will necessarily transfer into litigation. We'll see. Certainly Corey Holland of Marlow, a Republican that sponsored the trial de novo legislation, he'll be very defensive of that legislation. Other voices that aren't quite as polarized from the OEA are also saying things that are very critical. At the bottom line, I think this has the potential to divide traditional allies in the School Board Association from people they're usually aligned with in the OEA for purposes of getting more money for government education.
All right, very interesting. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And you can read more about these issues and many more on Pat's website, CapitolBeatOK.com.